Hi, I'm Beth Bonsignor from the iSchool, and this afternoon I'd like to share with you a little about the design of an alternate reality game, or ARG, known as the Arcane Gallery of Gadgetry. This particular ARG is part of a larger NSF-funded project that is exploring the ways in which ARGs might be used in educational contexts, as well as the ways in which they might be used as vehicles for the participatory design of collaborative sense-making tools. Also collaborating on this project are my colleagues Derek Hansen from the iSchool, Carrie Krause from the iSchool and Department of English, Amanda Visconti from the Department of English, and Allison Druin, Associate Dean of Research here at the iSchool. Imagine a Monday afternoon in April. You're a 13-year-old 8th grader on your way to social studies. You remember that today class is in the computer lab. Your social studies teacher and school librarian have told you that you'll be working on a new project with some university students and professors, and that it's supposed to be a game. You're hoping that it'll be something like Call of Duty Black Ops or Lego Star Wars, but you're guessing that it'll be some lame educational game from the web. You get settled in at a workstation with your classmates, and you check out the website address that the visitor from the university has scrawled on the chalkboard. Just no evil. As you wonder just what that has to do with social studies, you type it in and see this. We all learn about history, the facts, the dates, the big events, and the people involved in them. These are the things that historians have taken time to record, but history is not black and white. There is always another person's story to hear, even about those events we think we know so much about. Yet as time goes by, these stories have been lost. There will always be gaps in what we know. It is in these gaps that we find another history, the secret history of the world. Be warned, if you pursue the secrets of history, they just might start to pursue you. It's not too late to turn back. But if it's truth you're after and you dare to know more, then read on and begin to unfold the secrets of the junto. Okay, so that's promising, but really? That's a lot of reading for a game. So you start asking the visitor what this stuff is all about. Just what is this real American junto thing? You find out that way back in 1727, Benjamin Franklin had a club called the Junto, or Junto. He formed it with some of his best friends, and its goal was to do things to improve their community. They focused on science, politics, and morality, and in fact, the University of Pennsylvania, free public libraries, and even volunteer fire departments are some of the ideas that grew from the junto. They met each week, but before they could join, they would take an oath about respecting each other and sharing knowledge to improve mankind. But what happened to the junto? You find out that available historical records don't mention it after 1764. You're told that it may have evolved into today's American Philosophical Society, but nothing else. Your teacher, librarian, and student visitor give you a choice. You can take the oath and learn more about the junto and some of its efforts in science and politics, or you can work on some other history assignments. You and 57 other classmates decide to take the junto oath. So you and your classmates root around the site trying to find out more. Supposedly you're part of the junto now, and you stand for good, not evil. But there's something strange about that just no evil phrase. You remember something the university visitor and your librarian said about hidden messages, and then you see it. It's an anagram. You type Junto Lives into your web browser, and you're there. You are on the threshold of the junto of enlightened naturalists and inventors for a new united society, or genius. You're given a username and password and log in. The first thing you see is a formal-looking letter from a shadowy character who calls himself the Genius Ambassador, and he has a message for you. Here's an excerpt.
Dear Genius Applicant, you have taken the first steps towards joining the ranks of the junto of enlightened naturalists and inventors for a united society. We need your help. We have said before that Academy 1171706 is not an ordinary genius academy. It is an academy with a critical mission that must not fail. We cannot tell you what that mission is yet. First, you must complete Genius training and graduate from a Genius trainee to a Genius member. Start by reading about the 4 orders of Academy 117-1706. Take the quiz to find your best match within these orders. Then, join the order and start your training immediately. Remember, we're counting on you.
So for the next 4 days, you're off and training. You and your classmates earn badges when you complete different tasks, like finding historic sites on historic and present-day maps, learning how to decrypt and encrypt messages, learning to verify archival records, and to restore the patent models of inventions. At the same time, you meet another Genius member, a college student named April. She's finished a whole lot of training, has a bunch of badges, and she helps you and your classmates when you get stuck via chat sessions on the Genius status wall. But she also seems to know something about some big mission for you all. Every day she has a new video blog post that tells you a little something more about it. So over the next several days, as you learn April's story, you realize that all of your training will be needed to help April complete the final mission for Genius. Surveyors have to work with archivists to pinpoint locations of clues. Cryptographers have to decrypt some clues and encrypt others. And inventors have to ensure the communication tools are ready to go when they're needed. With all of your combined skills, though, April does get the mission done, and you save some United States history in the process. So, that was Season 1 of the Arcane Gallery of Gadgetry, or AGOG for short. It was an alternate reality game that was played by 58 8th graders for about 2 weeks this past spring. The Arcane Gallery of Gadgetry is a small prototype alternate reality game, one of a growing number of immersive experiences, some of which are shown here. Most were created as marketing and promotional tools for the entertainment industry. Some are book-based, while others are transmedia extensions of movies or TV series. In the past few years, a growing number have been explicitly created for education. AGOG may be one of the first that was done with middle schoolers. So just what are the features of an alternate reality game, or ARG? Well, first, it's an interactive narrative, or storytelling as archaeology, because the Junto and Genius story was discovered over time by the players as they completed missions and interacted with April and each other. Next, they didn't play as avatars in a video game in a virtual world. They played as themselves, in the real world, using all the usual tools available in their classrooms and at home if they played there. And note that while the story is unfolding, it is presented and played as though it is not fictional at all. The players didn't see it as a game, and this is called the "this is not a game" or TNAG aesthetic. Also, the story content was embedded carefully across multiple media types and tools. The story was an integral part of the game controls or mechanisms. Each character was designed to use tools whose affordances matched their role in the unfolding plot. For example, the mysterious and authoritarian ambassador would never have posted a video blog post to discuss missions or used the status wall to chat with players. He used audio podcasts and official memos only. In contrast, April was a student, not that much older than the players. She chatted to get and give help and posted video blogs to drop clues. In many ways, April acted as a mentor for the players, modeling the skills and actions that we were hoping that they would practice. An ARG is also malleable. That is, its storyline may be affected by players' ideas or actions. If the players don't do anything, nothing happens to advance the story. And in that sense, collaboration is required. For our game, if the cryptographers didn't help the surveyors, or the archivists didn't help the inventors, then April didn't complete the mission. So if we focus these features through the lens of education, ARGs can be seen as platforms by which students can practice new literacies, because in most ARGs, players are asked to either imagine a future world whose outcome they can influence, or to question the what's missing or what ifs of historical events, all of which are activities that require them to look at data critically and counterfactually. And since everyday technologies are the interaction mechanisms, ARGs offer an authentic way of learning and practicing skills that they'll need in the real world, because they're actually doing it in the real world. Finally, because they're playing as themselves and not an avatar or imaginary character, there's high potential for transferring and internalizing what they've learned. From a human-computer interaction perspective, there are lots of challenges in designing ARGs. For example, repeatability, because most existing ARGs have only been played once, and scalability, because most require huge amounts of support during gameplay since they're so dynamic. Also, if you're designing an educational ARG, how do you embed a means for assessing performance in authentic ways? Perhaps one of the most important design issues for ARGs in education may be the "this is not a game" or TNAG aesthetic. "This is not a game" is often paramount for players and designers, but if we're trying to teach historical thinking and information literacy, how do we responsibly and meaningfully balance factual stuff from fictional stuff? And note that these are notes from the middle schoolers' game. These are questions that they actually asked and wrote while they were playing the game on notes. One approach is to consider historical thinking itself and how historians look at the artifacts of our past in our present and for our future. So here's a chronological and conceptual representation of our design document. This is what the designers used. It was the under the hood of what you saw as a player. So the timeline and story bits above the diagonal represent events and people who are part of our established historical record. If we found gaps in this record, we took the opportunity to tunnel through them and build what-if scenarios and characters and artifacts. These are the bits below the diagonal. We found that if we went back to the look for the gaps in history idea from the player's introduction to the Just No Evil site, we could connect real events and people with could-be events and people and artifacts. So, for instance, if 19th century inventors submitted models of their work to the U.S. Patent Office, and some of these models were lost over time, we could imagine creating similar inventions that might have existed that could highlight a specific technology or scientific theory for the players to explore and learn about. And if there were a real fire in 1877 that destroyed half of the patent office, but its cause is still a mystery today, well then maybe some important documents from the Genius Society were lost then that could be found again during gameplay. So here are some of the survey responses we got from players at the end of the game. These survey responses were in response to questions, what surprised you about the game, or what did you think was fun? Most of the students thought it was a fun and worthwhile way to learn some history, even though many said that the missions were pretty hard. To situate the story you've just heard with our larger NSF project overall, whose goals, again, are to study ARGs as novel educational platforms and as potential enablers for the participatory design of sense-making tools, the larger project also includes the following sources of design data. We've had interviews with experienced ARG designers in industry and academia. We've had several design sessions with the Human-Computer Interaction Lab's Kids team. We've also had surveys and design documents from 83 master students who developed ARG lesson plans that might be integrated into AGOG. And we've gotten the field data from the design sessions and actual gameplay of 3 ARGs, the one we just completed that we discussed in this presentation, one scheduled for launch this fall with undergraduates, which will be an extended version of AGOG or Season 2, and one that's being designed by teens and librarians in Carroll County in Maryland that is part of their summer reading program. So in closing, here are a few broad design goals that should be considered if you're considering designing and launching an ARG. First, remember that the story is the primary driver for the game. It has to be embedded in the technology, and in-game characters should use technologies that match how they would interact with players, sort of like the ambassador in that disembodied voice of his. Next, try to set up game challenges and puzzles that ensure that each player's effort contributes in some way to the end game. Like the surveyors had to figure out where the next clue was, but once they got it, the cryptographers had to decrypt it, the archivists had to figure out how it fit in history, and the inventors had to make sure that it all worked. And finally, use gaps in what we know about history to allow players to consider what-if scenarios in different perspectives to promote information literacy. And pending any questions, that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.